Hello, everyone. We are really excited about today's podcast, Relaunch Her Next Chapter at Work. So, we understand that in midlife, many women, including myself, are returning to the workforce differently after maybe another job or taking a break for a while. Whether you're switching careers or you stayed home with the kids and worked hard in that regard, and now you're going to transition to work hard in another regard. And so on this episode, we are really wanting to highlight a couple of women who have done this big transition well and help you see that you also can do it well, that you are capable, that you can stand in confidence, that you are not disqualified because you chose to stay home with your kids, or you're not disqualified because maybe you haven't been in that arena. Joining us today is Kristen Douglass. Kristen lives in Sherwood, Oregon. She is one of my dearest friends, and she is a wife to Jeff, who my husband and Jeff went to medical school together. Our families are very close. She is a mother to 5 children, and she also is a pediatrician. So she is a board certified pediatrician. She started in pediatrics, stayed home, which we're going to talk more about, and then she is again practicing in pediatrics. She is a young life leader for sophomore girls. She is a boys high school volleyball coach, which is so fantastic. She's also a Boston Marathon finisher. She's a hiker, a cyclist, a pickleball player, and also she loves her Labradoodle, who I love too. So Kristen, welcome. We are so glad you're here today.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Thanks for the intro, and so fun to be here and just really appreciate it.
And our next guest is Tammy Strait, also one of my dearest and best in the world. She is married to Kevin for almost 20 years and has 3 incredible boys, Thomas, Oliver, and Will. And I have watched Tammy go through many, how should we say it, Tammy, iterations of herself. So originally she went to law school, and then she stayed home with her kids and was a writer. She's a runner. She's an Ironman finisher. She is a soul searcher, a child advocate. She is a justice seeker. She's worked in some nonprofit organizations, helping with some of that justice piece using her law background. So she was admitted to the bar in Minnesota prior to moving to Idaho, where she lives now. And she is just an incredible, strong spirit. She has such a kindness about her. And one of the things that we always joke about, Tammy and I, is that somehow we just have these similarities that pop up over and over and over again. We are so much alike and yet different for sure, but kindred spirits. So Tammy, welcome.
Thank you so much. So good to be here.
So let's just jump in to the topic. And Tammy, let's go ahead and jump in with you first. So what led to your decision after your law education? What led to the decision to stay home with your kids?
Well, to be honest, staying home with kids was always plan A for me. From the time that I was a little girl, I always just wanted to be a mom. And, life didn't work out that way for me a few times. And I thought, I need to have a backup plan. And so law school was really a backup plan to be able to be self-sufficient and take care of myself if the dream of becoming a mom wasn't going to come true for me. And it was funny because it was only about a month into law school that I met my future husband. And so I think God just wanted me to do the thing that I needed to do and step out. I wouldn't have done it probably if I had met him before. Being a stay-at-home mom was really the desire of my heart.
Mm-hmm. Kristen, how about you? How did you make that decision to stay home after practicing pediatrics?
Yeah, well, unlike you, Tammy, I always kind of wanted to work. And so I kind of grew up thinking I wanted to be this career woman. My dad is an ophthalmologist and my mom stayed home mostly. So it's sad to say, but at the time I didn't respect her as much. I thought, oh, I have this career ahead of me. I want to do all this stuff. And it really wasn't until I kind of went through med school and started thinking about having my family that my heart was really changed by the Lord. I really felt like wow, thank you, Mom. What a gift that you were home with me. I mean, she worked when I was in high school, but most of my childhood she was around. And so I started thinking about that before we had our first child. And I thought, well, maybe part time would be good. Maybe I could balance the career with, staying at home. And it's just a process of God just kind of changing my heart. So,
What did you learn about yourself, Kristen, during those stay-at-home years?
yeah. So I initially, like I said, thought I would, work and that kind of thing. And then I had my first child and couldn't go back. I just thought I need to be home with this little baby. And I thought it would just be for a short season. We wanted to have more children. And I just really thought in my mind, this is just going to be a short season. But I battled a lot with contentment at first, I would say. I really was trying to find kind of a purpose and a niche. And I felt a little isolated with a baby at home. So I think it was hard at first. And I think I had a lot of wrestling with the Lord during those early years, I think, too. I think the thing that God taught me was I needed to find contentment in Him, learn to rest in Him. And I think I learned to really enjoy being home. And, we had more kids and I kind of thought I would go back. And then we had two more kids. And I found a lot of joy in being home with the kids. And at the same time, I was able to kind of put that whole career thing aside and just focus on my family and find joy in the moment, because I really did feel like God called me to be home for that season. I really did, because it was a total heart change completely.
How about you, Tammy? What did you learn about yourself?
I learned that I think I was right and that God made me to be a mom. I really enjoyed those years. I really enjoyed, not that they weren't hard, not that there weren't really hard things, but it was the place that I was meant to be in their young ages. As they began to get older and go to school, I think that some of those feelings came up too of not being totally content anymore. They were gone for most of the day. And while it was fun to, get together with friends and do coffee and all of those things, there was a part of me that just felt like I had more to contribute. I had more in me. So I think I learned through those early years of motherhood how capable I was in terms of raising my kids and learning and growing and being with them and being present. But then I also learned that, life doesn't put us into a box and we have the ability to pivot and change and grow. And I think that that's something that, we kind of mentioned in the beginning. I've never been afraid to try something new and shift directions. And for some people that might seem like a failure to stay the course. But in other ways, I just feel like there's always something more exciting that's drawing me.
What strikes me with both of you, which may not be true for all of our listeners, is you invested a lot of time and money into your training before you made the decision to stay home. So, Kristen, you thought maybe you would go back after a little bit, but Tammy, did you think when you stepped back, this is just for a period of time?
When I initially envisioned myself going to law school, it was to be a litigator. That was kind of the idea of going to law school, is to be an attorney and to be in the courtroom. And that seemed really exciting. And that is really exciting. And I could see a version of myself living that life. Once I had a family and kids, that was no longer a realistic desire or goal in any way. But I always knew that a law degree would give me the ability to do a lot of different things. Basically, what it says is that I know how to learn anything, would just be well suited to doing something in the future. But I didn't know what that would be. I had no idea. I could have never imagined that I would go back to work and I would be doing what I'm doing now. I just didn't really know. That's the thing, when God calls you to do something, we don't really understand. And sometimes we just have to step out and we just have to be obedient to that. And He's going to write the story and fill in the steps, in those 20 years. And you get to just take part of it and be like, wow, now this all makes sense.
Yeah. So I would love to hear, as you were looking at going back to work, how that transition happened for you. I mean, what were some of the thoughts going through your head at that point, and how did you decide to take that next step?
Well, for me, it was completely out of necessity, really. after going through COVID, I'm married to a physician as well. And COVID hit our family in a really profound way. We really needed the income. There wasn't a lot of like soul searching or deliberating. It was just our family needs the financial support and I need to do it. I'm the only one who can right now. Again, he just showed up in the ways that only he can, and an opportunity that just landed really in my lap that was more than I could have ever asked or imagined. So for me, it was purely saying, I need to support my family.
Mm-hmm. Kristen, how about you?
Yeah, I think mine was a little bit of a different process. I mean, I had been home with the kids for a lot of years, you know. It really happened in COVID. I mean, COVID was good in a lot of ways for me. Everything stopped, all the running around with the kids stopped, all the sports and meetings. And we just, we're a family unit. We went over to Central Oregon and just kind of hunkered down, and I had so much more time for quiet time. So I was probably spending a couple hours a day, with the Lord, which is such a gift now that I look back on it. But he started kind of putting in my heart this idea of, what about going back to work? What are you dreaming of? What does your future look like? And I just was like, that's too scary. Like, I couldn't even go there. Like, I didn't want to tell anybody. I just kind of just stored it in my heart. And I did look into like, what is like emergency use physicians? Like, what does that look like? And I kind of looked online and I researched some of that. And I really wasn't qualified because I'd been out of work long enough that it was too long. But I just kind of had that there. And it really wasn't, it took months, really. I went to a thing called Seek Night at church. And it was really great. The pastor said, I really feel like tonight we need to pray that each one of us, God gives us a word. And he had kind of told the story of how he was from the UK and came to the States, and he showed us this word. Anyway, it was just really inspiring. And I prayed, and the word God gave me was courage. And I just thought, courage. Okay. It was very clear. I knew it was from the Lord. And I just sat on it. And I really thought it was courage to like share, with others, my faith. I was involved in Young Life and met with kids all the time. And I just sat on it and I just prayed over it. And it probably took a couple of months, I would say, of processing that. And every time I would pray, God was like, what about your dream? What about going back to work? And I said, no, Lord, it's just too hard. Like, I have to go through the board. I have to my certification is lapsed. There's a lot of hoops, and it was super scary. And I just kept telling him, no, no, no. And finally he said, I'm giving you that courage to do that. I will go with you. I go before you. I am with you in this. And so I started telling some people, you get your little friend group and, oh my gosh, you need to do this. And you're my husband. And they started praying for me, and I started the process. And once I kind of like said it out loud to people and really started to go down that road, I felt like it was really exciting. It was so scary, but at the same time, I really felt like God was with me. I think maybe I shared this with you, Krista, but I felt like in that time, because it was so hard, God gave me this vision of the Red Sea and really parting the Red Sea for me. This vision of him kind of at my right hand, just holding my hand through it, and like these waves on both sides. Like, it was just scary, but he's like, I am with you through this, and we're walking through it together, and I've already made a way for you. And kind of like Tammy said, there are seasons, and this is your season. This is your season to pivot and shift and try this, and I will help you through this. And he kept just reassuring me all the time. I really felt his presence and peace through it, even though it was really hard. And I'm super glad that I took kind of that leap of faith to go through that process.
Can you talk a little bit about what exactly felt scary?
Yeah, I think because I had been out of practice of medicine so long, the board has so many requirements. It took me a couple months just to get all the paperwork together that they needed from me to prove everything. And I had to be interviewed. The board only meets every 4 months. So it just there was just so many hoops. And, I had to take a national exam and then a board certification. And it just was every step of the way they tried to stop me. So it was really hard. I knew it was going to be hard, but it was a lot harder than I thought it was. But it was just scary. It was very intimidating. I mean, I could go on, but they basically discouraged me from doing it. They said, you can't do this. And I said, we'll see.
I think probably a lot of women can identify with, do I have what it takes?
Mm-hmm.
That the fear is partly that it's going to be hard, that they're like, I don't know how to figure this out. Our family has adjusted to us living a certain way with me being available all the time. Like those fears, like, how's this going to impact everyone? But then there's this deeper core fear of wondering, am I going to be able to do this? Or I have those self-limiting beliefs of the things that I have been doing not only have kept me from being in there, it's almost like they disqualify me from professional work.
Yeah. Am I enough? I think that's the question. And I mean, I would say I did struggle with that for sure. Am I enough? But then I really did feel God's reassurance in that. And then I did feel like I had a nice support team, all my friends, and my husband was huge, just cheerleader. Krista, you were a cheerleader in that process. So I think it's intimidating because you've been home for a while. And just that feeling of, what is it going to be like with our family? Is it going to change the dynamics? I mean, yeah, it was hard, but at the same time, it was so good because of the joy that I kind of experienced. My kids were like, oh, wow, that's really cool, Mom,
I really watched you, Kristen, keep showing up and keep following the path that you felt like you were supposed to walk. And I think that was one of the things that was so impressive to me. That whole Red Sea visual, I really held that with you. Like I remember praying that with you, and you had your part in it. God was giving you the courage, but you also were showing up time and time again. And when obstacles would come up, and one thing you didn't say is you had to go back into practice with another doctor. And I don't even know what the official term is called, but you had to essentially work under the supervision of another doctor for a while, which also takes humility. You were already a board certified pediatrician. You had to go back under someone to get back to where you are now. So what did that feel like?
That definitely was humbling and a process, but I knew it was a good process. I mean, I had to kind of go through all the steps that they wanted me to do, but yeah, I had to shadow and then actually, work with somebody, kind of mentor. Someone was mentoring me for over a year. So, which was good. I mean, I think in a lot of ways it was good. It was hard. I wasn't always treated awesome, but I think at the end of the day, I knew it was just something that I had to go through, another hoop, and it was worth it. And it was definitely worth it. And I think you just have to do what you have to do. I mean, I don't know any other way. So.
Well, and Tammy, in your case, I think about the necessity factor. And I think a lot of people feel that in midlife, that they've got kids going to college. We've got to take care of aging parents. There's a huge economic reality of we've got to start turning the cranks so that we can do what we need to do for everyone in our life. I think that really hits in an interesting way. You had that driving you. That was fuel. But what else was going on internally as you stepped into a predominantly male team and you're showing up for the first time? What did that feel like for you in that first moment?
In the beginning, I was very nervous and scared, for sure. I mean, I was going into work, with an executive team, at the C-suite level. And so my expectations were that I had no idea what I was doing and that I could totally embarrass myself, humiliate myself. What were they going to ask of me, and could I do it? I'd been out of work for so long, and Krista knows more than anybody, I'm terrible at most of technology nowadays. It's just such a weakness for me. So yeah, I was terrified, honestly. And yet I've never been afraid to do things afraid. So I've just always made decisions like, yes, I'm afraid, but so what? I mean, everybody's afraid. Everybody's afraid. And I have found in my life, as I look back, that 100% of the time, my fears and insecurities rarely come true. Usually all my anxieties far exceed anything that ever happens. And that was the case here as well. I ended up going in thinking I was going to be, a charity case in some ways. They didn't know my situation, because you don't share all of those things with everybody. So, I was still going in confident that this is what I wanted for my life. But, there were very different reasons motivating it in the beginning. And despite all my fears, I show up and find out that none of those things were true, that I was capable. And anything that I didn't know, I was going to learn along the way. And there was no judgment. There was no meanness or cruelty or anything. So all of my fears never came to pass.
I get an inside look, but you have become one of the essential tools in the business, and you are irreplaceable at this point. And so again, like Kristen, that idea that you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you don't know something, you learn it, and you keep showing up to the work in front of you. And now, to see what you've done in that business, that's incredible. Tammy, what has surprised you the most about re-entering the workforce?
I think what surprised me the most is it's been really healing for me. I never would have expected that. I feel so fortunate to work for the men that I work for. The CEO and CFO are both men, and they have been wonderful people, wonderful humans, and they have rebuilt some of those broken places, feeling like my thoughts matter, my opinions are really valued, my intelligence and knowledge is trusted and believed. Those were things that I always had to really hustle for. And they've been given to me really freely here. And it's been incredibly healing. So that was a big surprise.
It's really beautiful. Kristen, what has surprised you?
Something that I remember meeting with kind of a mentor of mine. She's another physician before I went back to work. One thing she told me was, really, she had been working and kind of just grinding it out, and she had her first child. And then she went back to work, and she really saw it as a ministry. She saw her vocation as really, hey, God's called me to this, to love and serve the patient in front of me. And so every day she woke up and she was excited to go to work. And I thought, that is awesome. I want to have that, because I was in practice for a while and I really just didn't like the situation I was in real well. And I would complain all the time, and I would just kind of, it wasn't the best. And I think what surprised me is just going back into practice. Now this is kind of my choice. And I feel like I've really enjoyed it so much, and looking at it as a way to serve and give back. And even in my crazy busy days, I'm like, I've helped some people today, and I think God is using me with my gifts. And it feels really great to look at it as a way to serve others. And I think it's been a joy. So I think that has surprised me, that I've enjoyed it so much. I know I would, but my mindset has totally shifted, I think, from when I was practicing before. So
I'm curious if now that you've made the transition, looking back to where you were when you were making that decision about going back to work, what would you tell yourself at that point, at the decision-making point, now having lived through it, now knowing what you know about where you are today? What would you tell your previous self about the process?
Yeah, part of it was, hang in there, right? It'll all be worth it. You can kind of see, like, there was so many uncertainties, like what practice I would be in, and what it would look like with the family and all these things. But, that God is the provider God. And like, if he's really called me to this, or if he's called other women back to work, then he's going to bless that. It's just, maybe I could have relaxed a little bit more. Maybe I could have enjoyed the process a little bit more. Just knowing the end result that God was going to provide and far greater ways than I could have imagined. And so blessed. And I feel like, that would have been nice to have, I guess. But, we all learn and grow during the process.
Yeah. What about you, Tammy?
I think I would say I did go into this with my hands pretty open. I've held on really tightly in my life to most things. I like control. It brings me comfort. But my life was so out of control at that point that I really didn't have the ability to think about that as much. And I guess I would say to somebody who maybe wasn't in the absolute necessity that I was in, if they were still more of that, like, I don't know, do I want to? Do I not want to? What do you have to lose, really? Like, I think that for so many of us, especially our generation, like we were taught to build things forever and hold things forever and buy things that will last. And that's wonderful. And that really matters in a lot of ways. And I think that built some really important things in us. But I think that it's also created this illusion of permanency of everything. Like, I can't just try something because what if I fail, or what if it doesn't work out exactly like I think and then I'm a failure? Instead of just being like, well, if I don't like it in 6 months, I could do something else. Or if I hate it, I could just quit. Or, like, why do we get so locked into this one idea and we think if this doesn't work out, that means X? It doesn't. And the reality is we're so afraid of what other people are thinking about us and what other people assume about us. And if we stop thinking about that, because the reality is they're not thinking about us, and we think about what our family thinks about us or what our family needs, what we want, what we desire. And then if it doesn't work out and we don't like it, do something else.
Yeah, I was talking with someone a couple of days ago about God's will and how we often think God's will is pointing me towards one thing. And so we can do this with our careers. He wants me to do one thing, yes or no. And if I don't get it right, I'm going to miss the plan. Versus the concept of God's will is a wide lane. And there's a lot of room in there. And it's very comforting to know that we can't mess up God's plan. Like, if we don't do that thing that we're struggling to decide, it's not going to mess up his plan. He's going to be able to move forward. But we put that pressure on ourselves. And I think the permanency does go along with that too. Like, there's this something that is the one thing. And I've been really working at opening my mind and remembering that God has a wide lane for us in his will. And my job is to love God and love my neighbor, and that there's a lot of space in there for creativity.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you look back, you see all those places where things didn't work. And then now how God brought threads from all of those experiences into the present or into something that's still being developed for the future. And every single one of those times where you're like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think of me? Or, oh my gosh, I'm such a failure. Or I'm so ashamed, or I'm so embarrassed. But then you look back 20 years later and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that didn't work out. I'm so glad that God, protected me from that person or that relationship or that situation, and we're able to just say, none of it is wasted. None of it is wasted. He uses every bit of it, even the failures, especially the failures, I think, because that's when he really causes us to lean on him and depend on him and trust him. And so when we're in those places where we've lost something or we've failed at something, those are the places that really bond us closer to him, that he gets to use in our future to make something really, really beautiful.
I was thinking about kind of what I was going to share today before this interview, and the vision kind of I got was open hands. And I love that you said that, Tammy. It's just every season of our life, we really should have open hands before the Lord, because we don't know what he's calling us to. And like you said, Alex, like, it is a wide lane. It may look different a year from now, but like, open hands and like, what do you want from me, God? How can I be used today? And then dreaming big, like, what could it be? Something big and stepping out. Like, just like you said, just one step at a time, but like, we're going to have fear. It's like how it is. We're wired that way, but it's okay. It's okay to have some fear and just go to the Lord with it. But yeah, I love that vision of open hands and that surrender position. And then really just asking God, what do you want? I mean, maybe it's not going back to work. Maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's picking up a hobby. I don't know. Jeff's cousin, my husband's cousin's wife, when I was about 40, she was about 10 years older. And I was just asking, because all our kids were gone, like, how do you do it? Like, what brings you joy? And like, what are you up to now? And she said, I think either one, you can go back to work, volunteer, or get a hobby. And she really got into tennis. So, something where you feel like you have some community and you feel like you're connected and being used in that. It doesn't have to be work, but I think something to add value to your life. And it can look a lot of different ways for a lot of different women. But I think just having that open hands and that posture of just surrender, like, what is it?